I'm Michelle Lujan Grisham. I'm the Democratic nominee for the 1st Congressional District, and I'm probably giving you all the information that you already know. So quickly, the district is largely Albuquerque, but not entirely. So it goes east all the way into all of Torrance County, actually. So it wraps then, southwest from there. It's a tiny sliver now of Valencia County, primarily Los Lunas, and a tiny part of Belen. Isleta is out of the district. It's all of Bernalillo, but not Rio Rancho, not Corrales, and all of Placitas. So you've got part of Sandoval County, all of Torrance County, Edgewood, sliver of Santa Fe County, and a sliver of Valencia County. So it's a very unique district in that it's easy to get to all those places except for the far reaches of Torrance County. But it's largely an urban district and the urban district for the state. So being here today as a candidate talking about jobs and the economy and what financial institutions are doing to help us create a much better dynamic is a perfect segue, because these elections here and all across the country are only going to be about the economy and jobs. Because you can't get to any of the other issues unless we do something about that. And so I'm really grateful for the work that you're currently doing, and just to tell you how grateful I am, I'm going to tell some personal stories to make sure that it's clear that I'm just not reading your briefing papers or taking advantage of Juan Fernandez and everybody else who's helping me learn the issues and do the research so that I can be knowledgeable and thoughtful as a partner, because I hope to be your partner and I hope to gain your support. But I've been a credit union member since 1983, and I am an imperfect member. I am sometimes flush and sometimes not so much. I have been employed and sometimes not. I have been a continuous member, and my credit union has always figured out a financial pathway for my personal financial issues and my family's. 8 years ago, I suddenly lost my husband, and I will tell you that I decided I lost a business. I lost half my income. I had to change my retirement plan. I had kids still in high school. I had one kid in college. I wasn't sure, out of state, how I was going to pay for that, and I went to my credit union. And we developed a new pathway, now the one negative, and it'll get us to some future policy work. What I really wanted to do is to create my own business. And you all helped me do that, but it took 2 years for me as a brand new businesswoman in this climate after 2008 to be able to get capital for a business loan. It was miserable. And you were responding to a financial climate that you did not create, and new regulatory restrictions and environments that cause you not to be able to put money in the hands of individuals who can use that to create economic recovery. And so I didn't have to be briefed too much on member business loans or your Jobs Act, because I lived it in 2008. And even though it took 2 years, which for most people means you don't get to do business, you're done. That opportunity leaves. Now I was lucky, but I want you to be in a position to make smart investments and to support your members so that they have the opportunities that I almost missed. Because that doesn't make any sense. And had I missed that opportunity, I wouldn't be in a position to run for Congress, because I would be financially unstable. I love what you're doing about housing, to engage in the housing market in a productive way. I'm living that too. My mother lives with me. My father died unexpectedly about a year ago. He got himself engaged with predatory lenders that I think probably a family member led him to, because a family member was struck hard by this economy and couldn't manage their mortgage and a mortgage for another family member. It all got wrapped up in a very unproductive bundle for my father, who was 83 years old and still practicing dentistry so that he could pay upside-down mortgages on his house, my brother's house, and my brother's in-laws' homes. And today, guess what's happened? My mother's house is being foreclosed upon, and she lives with me, and its credit unions are helping my brother try to navigate a pathway to recovery. Because if he doesn't do that, he's been in his home 18 years, and he will lose it. 18 years, because the mortgage is in my father's name, because my father had the better credit history. He had no security, no navigational support, no good advice, because he wasn't part of a member organization whose obligation it is to serve your members and their families. That's not the same obligation of every institution. I've also been briefed. I love the ATM. I mean, I I want there to be disclosures, and probably I'm going to lose the endorsement right now. Juan and I did not talk about that, but you know what? No one likes bank fees. I don't like ATM fees, I don't like checking fees, I don't like overdraft fees, I don't like credit card fees, I don't like any of it. The reality is, if you look at those fee structures, it's credit unions who've held the line and more than anyone else. And yet now you're caught in the liability framework related to that disclosure. I think there are ways to resolve those problems, and I applaud you for at least identifying it as an issue that could create an environment where you're actually having to increase fees to deal with potential liability and real liability issues. And I also appreciate the benefit that you have on the industry by being competitive and keeping those fees down. And the last thing that we talked about, I mean, I am on board because I am living with you in this environment. I am on board. I operate a nonprofit health insurance company, and I do that for the state of New Mexico through a contract. My business partner and I have 2 contracts to do the high-risk pools. Does everybody know what those are? Yes? Good? I don't have to say anything? Maybe one person? Worth 1 second? Okay, 1 second it is. So a high-risk pool is an environment when most states have them. Now they're all required at least to try to have them by the Affordable Care Act, and the feds pay for it. But here it is. The private insurance market rates go up, the sicker you are. So if you take sick patients, mostly patients who can't be insured because they have a pre-existing condition, so forget the new law, there has to be a vehicle for cancer patients, liver transplant patients, kidney transplant patients, hemophiliacs, individuals with HIV/AIDS to have access to an insurance market. So a high-risk pool puts all of those expensive patients into a pool, and then we give insurance companies a premium tax credit. That credit's returned to us to pay the losses because no one could afford the premium and the deductibles on their own to sustain the pool. So we have to have this partnership. But the operation is nonprofit. Our aim here is to have access to health care. Same as you, nonprofit. Your aim is to provide financial services to your members and to include you in a tax structure that clearly you should not be involved in is inappropriate, outrageous, and is an alarming signal to every other cooperative member service organization in the country. And quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, the new Affordable Care Act says we ought to have more of those in the healthcare industry. So your leadership on this issue will stabilize costs for other organizations who are supposed to do exactly the same. Do it better, do it cheaper, do it longer, and be more financially stable over the long haul. So I'm very excited about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I am really excited about my opportunity to serve you in much the same way that you've served and supported me these many years in Albuquerque, in this community. In fact, I have a brand new loan with Alan, and how embarrassing. Tell me your name one more time.
To Mexico?
No, not that. I have to write a check to you every month, believe me.
That's good, every month. Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody else knows that we have this relationship.
Ah, all right. Tell me your first name.
Jim.
Jim, I don't know why I forgot that. Dominic's taking notes. Please cue Michelle not to forget important people's first names while she's giving a talk or endorsement. He's texting it to me right now. I know. This is hard work. But Jim, thank you. And so I am engaged every day. This is what I think we all want. Whether I'm on board with every issue, and I am, or not, what you should expect in somebody who's elected to represent you, that I treat you in exactly the same way that you treat your members. I work for you. We figure out productive pathways to serve the citizens of this district and the entire state together. We have to do that by creating a fair, proactive, transparent federal environment that allows you to give your members what they need to be successful. And I think that what you're doing today is incredible, and there's many more opportunities. And I commit to you that I will always be available. And Jim, I won't forget your name, and I hope to see you at WEX in the near future for coffee. That's the kind of relationship we should have, a partnership to improve the quality of life of the people that we have here. And I am really excited about your role in economic recovery, because all the employment is going to be in small businesses. I just announced a brand new hire in my small business. We are doing it one employee at a time. Those investments are critical to the backbone of productive, sustainable economic recovery for the future. And if we don't do that together, all the social and policy issues that we may or may not agree on never get addressed, because there's no productive way to address them if we don't deal with the jobs and financial issues of today. Now, I'm in a really good spot to win this race. You know, I'm the very first Native New Mexican Hispanic woman to ever hold, potentially, a federal elected office. My cousin Manuel Lujan held this office for one of the longest terms, if not the longest terms. I need to check, really. So Dominic, note to self, we have to see who was longer, Manuel or Schiff. But I think it was Manuel Lujan. Folks were very proud of that in my family, but he's a whole different tribe. I have to tell you, that tribe is solidly Republican. My tribe of Lujan, solidly Democratic. We're related through the Romeros. And the reason that I submit that to you or give you that information is it should be indicative that I have a long-standing familial relationship with New Mexico and with this country, and it's important to me. A better dynamic for the future is important to me and my two children who live here, and my mother who lives with me, and my future grandchildren, I squarely hope. So I'm going to be here. I've also, this is my third very difficult contested primary to get through in a row. And I'm not doing any more of those. I'm not doing any more of those. This is the job I want. What you want in a politician is somebody who wants that job. This is the job. I couldn't be more honored and more excited about the opportunities, even though the climate is so negative and so difficult. I excel, frankly, in those environments, and I'm ready to tackle it one tough issue at a time and start to make a difference. In this particular race, I think our campaign looks very solid. In the very first quarter out of the gate, I had significant campaign debt, and even so, I outraised my opponent 5-1, and had significant more cash on hand, even though I had to put up that debt in that report for the first quarter. We expect to have the same kind of robust fundraising in the next quarter. We hope to be first on TV, and we're going to be well prepared to deal with third party. No matter what flavor you are in terms of your party affiliation, both parties spend independent money, and candidates have to be prepared to deal with those independent expenditures. And we're going to work hard to be prepared. But I would guess that if a poll was held today, that we would be ahead, given that we paid for name ID in the primary, and my candidate did not. My opponent did not. So that puts us in a very, very good position. And the fact that I worked 20 years in government in a bipartisan environment, I will tell you what voters want. They want to know that you can cooperate without compromising core values, that you understand the issues, that you're willing to be honest and earnest and available. And I am absolutely and squarely all of those things, and I believe unequivocally we're going to demonstrate that, again, to voters, and I hope I have your support. I thank you. Does anybody care about my background? Lawyer, Cabinet Secretary for Health, Cabinet Secretary for Aging and Long-Term Services, Aging Director. I was appointed by Governor Bruce King, and I was reappointed by Governor Gary Johnson. Then I was retained by Governor Richardson. Then I was elevated by Governor Richardson. Then I became a Bernalillo County elected official. I was in the private sector before I went to state government. I have the longest appointed tenure, I think, still at that level in the history of the state of New Mexico, and I'm a small business owner.
St. Mike's graduate.
And I'm a St. Mike's graduate, absolutely. Go Horsemen. So thank you very much for entertaining me today, and I'm happy to have a dialogue and answer questions, and if I don't have the answer, I hope that you will help me garner the information so that I can be thoughtful about any issues that you raise. Yes, Jim?
It's Jim.
I'm never going to live that down.
Well, you know, this is a question I ask all candidates from the standpoint that I think 2008 was an interesting election year, because I think that everybody talked about change, and then all of a sudden the election was over, and Washington was spinning, and when these people integrated into Washington, they ended up spinning to Washington, and you know, even Washington will say it's Washington, and then there's the rest of how the world's working. how are you going to deal with that when the Democratic person in charge calls you up and says, well, Michelle, you know, we need this vote, and it may not necessarily be what you want to do. I mean, a lot of people have tried to run that gamut, and they're one-term wonders because, you know, whatever happens. But that's what's, you know, we talked about change. That's what America's coming to. It's gonna, somebody's gonna have to break the cycle.
Right.
Somebody's gonna have to do it. And what ideas can you bring to the table on how you would handle some of that stuff?
Well,
I mean,
two
healthcare
things.
is a good example.
Healthcare is a great example.
You know,
Yeah, two things. One, you got to make it all local. And so I may not by myself be able to break any of the gridlock, irrespective of your point about are you going to go along with every bad or good idea simply because you belong to the party that's moving that forward. And for me, I think there's still such gridlock, and I don't know what's going to be the outcome of the 2012 election cycle. So I want to get stuff done here. There's lots of money here. There's lots of opportunity here. There's lots of opportunity for state legislative work that can make a difference in these climates. So you got to get on the ground because people are tired of waiting. And if I were to say to you, I can do it, and then not deliver, then I've been disingenuous. So I'm going to do that irrespective. And then the second thing, I don't know if you've watched my career, but and I've taken a lot of heat, and I will take heat again. And if you've been local and you've been successful local, I have protection here from somebody who's upset with me in Washington. But on the county commission, I voted against some of the Democrats for transparency and good government. I voted with Republicans for economic development. I voted against Republicans for jail operations. I voted, so if you look at my voting record, it's been highly independent. And I make those decisions twofold. But what I believe based on my review of the best decision, and I test those decisions and my information with my constituents and communities of interest who either have greater expertise or who are going to be directly affected. That's the way I think that you make a good decision. And I've gotten into trouble. And if you'll look on the county, I mean, even for hiring practices, often I'm the only vote yes and the only vote no. But here's something else I'm really proud of that I can point to the county commission. Even when I lose a vote, and I've lost several, I have implemented the very thing I tried to get action on at the county commission level. And I'll give you an easy example. The sheriff's union came to me because the new sheriff, you know, said he was going to do, he didn't say he did, he held a mandatory cadet graduation at Legacy Church. And Legacy Church is a fundamental Christian church, and they're allowed to do their work and promote their ideas with their members, and they do a fine job at that. You probably should not have a public mandatory event hosted by the sheriff who's a member of that particular church, right? It's a problem. It's a huge constitutional dilemma, at the very least, and in my legal opinion, it's just illegal. And we might have varying opinions about that, but irrespective, I've got folks who don't like it, who don't want it. I got the ACLU saying, you've got a legal problem. So we have issues that are identified. I lost that vote squarely. I think that I lost that one 3-2. I actually had one other partner. And I kept working with the sheriff and the church, and working with the sheriff and the church, and worked with other religious communities of interest. And guess what? The sheriff finally agreed that he would not do that. That he would agree to have public required events in public buildings without us requiring him to do it. And he came to that conclusion because I identified another series of support by religious affiliated organizations to give him the support on behavioral health and crisis intervention training that he needed. Find another way to solve the problem. Don't walk away because you lose and feel like you can't ever work with that individual again. And that's what's wrong with Congress. They draw a line and nobody will cross over it. And we have got to stop operating that way. And I can do it because you're going to help me make sure that we don't have that environment, not as far as I'm concerned, in Washington.
Well, I'm kind of like Jim, right?
It's Jim. I'm just some James.
James. I ask every candidate the question, because it really gets so big. been just hell-bent to see the credit unions are taxed. Now, they're not going to receive a penny of that tax, so I think there's some kind of disconnect there. But there's going to be an enormous amount of pressure, both financial and political, and in some cases social pressure, to support the bankers' issues on credit union taxation. It's reared its ugly head many times. It's going to continue to rear its ugly head. So how do you say?
When banks decide that they're not a for-profit lending institution, I'll be more open-minded about fair taxation across organizational lines. That's a very tough thing for them to have to come to the table with. And there are other things that banks do well in a competitive environment that they need, and they may get my support on. Just because it's not that issue doesn't mean that I can't have a relationship or partnership with banking institutions, from community banks, privately owned banks, and that's an issue particularly given where we're headed, with cooperative and member service organizations recognizing that that effort by itself can lend itself to better health care, better corrections, better lending, better housing. I'm trying to think of a place where it's not being utilized and we're having better outcomes. We spend less, we do more. That to allow this taxation issue to bleed in those other environments. So let's get ourselves some friends. So it's not about, they're a financial institution just like we are, and they don't have to do the same thing. You're not the same thing. So we ought to create categories of other cooperative member service organizations who have the same benefit for a good reason, and use that, I think, as a strategy to help us with this issue. And then banks clearly don't qualify. That's one idea, and I'm hoping that you'll help me with many other ideas. And I love your national folks, and I'm sure they will help me with many other messaging points that will allow me to stand strong. But I have to tell you, I might be little, but I got no trouble holding my own when I know I'm doing the right thing.
Well, credit unions are always looking for friends in office.
All right. Me too. I'm always looking for friends.
Have you talked to the community banks during your campaign? Have they come to you with this plea for not allowing the raising the cap on member business lending? And in your conversations with them, have they mentioned TAG at all to you and how important that is to them? Because we're looking at a way to combine legislation that would give banks, you know, put it out there longer for them, another 3 to 5 years, I think is what it is. And then as long as we can raise the MBL cap, extend the TAG, is what I was trying to say. So in your conversations with them, have they raised this issue of TAG? Are they?
They haven't, but I'll tell you, I think, why. So we are scheduled to start talking to the community bank folks in the next week or so, and we're here first. I know. Well, it's easy to be here first because you guys are a bit more proactive about your engagement in these races. I will tell you that yesterday I was contacted by John Anderson about whether I was willing to have lunch to talk about bankers' issues, and I said, of course. Right? I'm available to you. I'm available to everyone. But they already know, I've worked with John Anderson for a long time, about sort of where my heart is and where my perspective is. And if you know anything about me, I have a long record about supporting a nonprofit member service organizations. So they're clear about that, but I'm interested in what their ideas are for economic recovery and what their ideas are for improving the financial issues that we're struggling with now. I'm interested in what they think we ought to do in terms of better regulatory oversight in the places that we don't. I'm interested, but I have not yet gotten to community banks. So where you think there are segues, that would be very helpful for us as we prepare for that meeting in the next week.
Well, I think it's just important that the banks understand credit unions are not trying to stand in the way of getting any regulatory relief for them. We have never, ever stood in their way. But I think we're at that point now where it's, if you want regulatory relief and you want TAG, and this is so important to the community banks, not the national banks, because that's John's group, but the community banks, and if that's so important to you, let's work to get that passed together, but don't you know, don't go against us on
Would I have your support to say in my meeting next week that, you know, I've been spending some time getting up to speed on credit union issues, and it occurs to me that there are places to partner here and that there seems to be open-mindedness in this group on that issue. I don't want to get in the way of your lobbying efforts, but would that be a fair statement to them?
Absolutely, because I mean, we stood shoulder to shoulder on interchange with the banks, small, large, you know, and there are so many issues in the regulatory realm where we're all suffering as a result of it. So it seems like to me from, if everybody is so focused on getting regulatory relief in the financial services sector, why don't we stand together on more of these issues as opposed to just butting heads, and then nobody gets any gain.
That's right.
And this is one area where we could do that with the community banks especially. If they really want tag, let's do tag. We'll help support that, but raise the cap on MBLs when you know it's not going to hurt you. We're not going to gain this.
No, and I love what you said about not being a contest. That if we don't learn to partner and leverage our resources so we can get the right things done, we really aren't going to get out of this mess. I'm really concerned. I mean, we're local government. I spend money on microloans. I'm spending money on economic development investments. We're spending money on housing opportunities. There was always a role for us in developing low-income housing. But, you know, we've stepped that up to a brand new umbrella called affordable housing. And the reason that we're in all of those niches is because the current environment has prevented those opportunities by a whole variety of financial institutions. So now, arguably, we're competing in markets we should not be involved in, because we can't get the right resources to the right folks at the right time. And so any place where we can broaden our partnerships and have shared interests, the better off we all are. So I love that. And thank you for making me aware of that issue. Your timing could not be better.
Just to put things in perspective, and just so you know, recently, I think it was about a month or two ago, the president of the ICBA nationally was quoted in Politico saying that he would rather see his entire legislative agenda burn before he allows the credit union member business lending to move. And that's around the time that they were spending thousands of dollars in the media attacking the bill and attacking credit unions. So I just wanted to give you a little perspective that that's been traditionally their stance, that they don't want to compromise, they don't want anything credit union related to move, and they would rather seal their agenda and die.
So be it. I mean, sometimes, and I'm kidding, sometimes I think when people make such loud, really inappropriate statements about there's no way to share in an environment of success is an indication to me that they don't have a good idea about how to move forward. So the best thing to do is to attack everybody else. And we have to create a climate in Congress, and I'll hold Congress responsible for that response. We've allowed our elected officials to create such a hostile, negative, nasty environment that it has transferred itself to all the advocates and lobbyists and individual issues that are supported by a number of organizations or individuals. And we have to put that right. We have to give everybody hope that they've got an issue that's appropriate, that can be addressed, and that we can make compromises and shared sacrifices that allow us to do what we need to do, which is to put people like me in a position to be successful, because that's what you're trying to do. And in fact, it did make me successful. And I'm very grateful. The reality is, without credit unions, my business is thriving. I absolutely wouldn't have it. And without that business, I couldn't afford to run for Congress. I think these are real life issues. And to try to make them, move them away from what's really going on in this country is a mistake. And we need to humanize these issues and put a face on what's really going on. And Congress has a responsibility to do a much better job about messaging back to those folks. But you got to be tough about that. You know, I can't be bullied. That statement doesn't cause me to cave. I don't respond well to that. I do respond well. Ideas of success that benefit as many people as possible without unfairly creating an environment that's too negative for one.
One, some people should have been more of this now than a corporate group.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that you understand the freedom of difference, being a member for about 20 years, 30 years, whatever. The question I have is, if we're going to get close to balancing the budget, closing some deficit gap, we have to hit the big four, which means entitlement reform. We have to look at Social Security, Medicare, interest on the debt, and defense spending. And I'll probably sound like a heretic because New Mexico receives a lot of defense dollars. But we know that if we're going to get close to balancing the budget, we have to address those four issues. How do you have a philosophy or concept that you would use to guide either Medicare reform, Department of Defense spending, efficiencies, cuts? Is it a matter of spending cuts and revenue enhancements? Is it a matter of one or the other or both?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to go about this from, I'm going to back into it because I just did an interview with the Journal about this issue. And in the 90s, Governor Johnson, like all states, we were dealing with not the national financial or international global financial crisis that we're seeing today, but we were seeing Medicaid costs explode. And so it doesn't matter that you get 75% of that investment through the federal government, your 25% investment, that raw number is growing exponentially. And so a bipartisan group of legislators got together in the 90s to decide what could they do about this. You know, the 96, maybe 97. What can we do about it, all right? They wanted every cabinet secretary and every advocate give us ideas for reform. You can't just leave it alone, all right? So let's figure it out. So everybody focused on the two things that you can focus on. You either change who's eligible, so you change the entitlement, narrow that, or you reduce the amount of services and benefits that a person gets. I suppose there's a third that you could do, which is to create an environment where people are paying for more of their share instead of having it all subsidized. And then I got up, and now you're going to think that I'm here, so I'm sad. All you do is squeeze it here, and then it bulges out someplace else, and you have another social problem. Less people on Medicare and Medicaid, more people you have waiting in emergency rooms. More people waiting in emergency rooms, more money you pay in your property taxes. More money you pay in your property taxes, less property you will have. And we just have this vicious cycle, and it really is. And it's because that's all we've been able to do, because we succumbed to pressure, and we haven't been proactive, and we refused, which I think is your point, to make some tough decisions. There are tough decisions. Everything ought to be outcome-based. We don't do that. We just send money fee-for-service by and large, and, you know, caution to the wind and see what happens. And so they're not controlled at all. We have to get people insured. I think that the Affordable Care Act is a really good first step. It's riddled with tags and added items that don't belong in the Affordable Care Act. And we're going to have to really think about moving those out. And I may be one of those crazy Democrats that takes a hard look at, you should never put these finance structures in the Affordable Care Act. They don't make any sense. And the other issue is that if we don't do public health and community health and solve obesity and diabetes as an example, I don't care what you do. I don't care if you keep squeezing eligibility, well, they'll do it fast enough. I don't care what you do about the services. You won't be able to catch up with those costs. You never will. The real issue in this country is we spend more than anybody else and we're sicker than anybody else. We're doing nothing about it. Personal responsibility and support, focus on chronic disease. For the first time ever in this country, longevity is going to go down. I'd like to see in my lifetime that it pops back up. It's because we are so sick and unhealthy. Physical fitness. So I want to increase the tax revenues. I want to do that fairly, smartly. I want there to be shared sacrifices. I want to think about large corporations that are definitely not paying their fair share. I want to be careful about these arbitrary numbers. You know, today at $250,000, and you would know this better than anyone. It's not enough for a family of four. You've got kids in college and you're caregiving, and I'm doing all those things. And I don't make $250,000, but I like to identify that as we have some very odd thresholds. And you're going to have to make folks like me and my mom figure out ways to reduce the costs of health care by getting more of our health in our homes, by being more responsible directly, by going to public health. Because this notion of going to your primary care provider, your specialist every day, cannot be sustained. And all we've done is fool with reimbursement rates. and we get everybody insured, but that's all we do. So it'd be as if, in sort of figuring out what to do about this climate and giving people access to a variety of loans and business loans, you just tried to figure out solving the crisis by managing fees and interest rates. It's not enough. It doesn't get you, it doesn't get people employed, right? So I think we're asking the wrong questions because we're afraid. And the defense spending, I'd like to see the same thing. There's not a cost-benefit analysis. That's really what BRAC is supposed to do, but it's only about military bases. But they haven't taken that aspect to military investments and Department of Defense investments. Here, I have a great idea because I'll tell you in this community, if we lost Kirtland and Sandia, so I'm just going to say it, we're in trouble. We are in trouble. We can't afford it. Be like the decimation of manufacturing to those manufacturing states. But why aren't they being redirected to make their investments in entrepreneurial or jobs creation here on the ground? Why are we doing defense investments and then separate investments to Sandia with not in a relationship for, say, biomedical engineering or alternative energy, and that their outcomes have to be getting people trained and employed and jobs and new companies on the ground in Mexico? I don't understand that. One of their performance measures is outsourcing, showing how many contracts they've executed out of the state. Does that seem like a good outcome to you? So we don't do anything in this country in terms of, I don't think. We do very little this outcomes based. And then you can make fair cuts, because it's not on seniors and disabled, it's not on retirees, it's not on the rich, it's not on the poorest, it's not on the middle, it's not on families, it's not on women, it's not on single people. You have to start saying, what are the outcomes that we have to get to in this country? And we don't do that. We take a class because we look at a unit cost, focus there and say that's the easy pathway ahead. And I think that you end up spending far more money later to fix those problems. The reality is, and I know too much about retirees and older people, if you didn't have seniors with their Social Security income reinvesting it, I can't even imagine. There's a whole lot of them. And I don't know, I didn't want to disclose it, so I'm going to let you in a little secret. There's a lot more of them. So we have to find a way to do a different tax structure with Social Security, to find ways for people to work and get partials. I mean, you have to think of new ideas. But the only new idea, and it's the point that you made, Jim, it's all or nothing. We're gonna dismantle Medicare and privatize Social Security. Those are the only ideas on the table. And here's me. I hate those ideas. What is that? That is poor debate. That is poor policy making. That is ineffective, and the people who suffer, everybody in this room. There are so many ideas about getting things done. Here's the easy one on Medicare. Let people who can afford to pay their own way in Medicare volunteer to opt out. Will they all do it? No. But you create other incentives. I've learned the hard way what happens when we create mandates for people. We don't respond well to mandates. You spend a lot of time trying to enforce it. Costs a lot more money. People get, there's gaps. People wait to find out they're eligible, and things that you probably don't know. That you know when you're disabled, you're clearly disabled. You get about $800 of income, but you wait 2 years to get Medicare. That's a good idea. So let me see if I understand this. You can't work because you're disabled. I need you to have income so you can stay in your house. If you don't stay in your house, you have to go to the nursing home. The nursing home costs me, the taxpayer, $75,000 to $110,000 a year. So I definitely want you to have the income and stay put. But I'm not going to give you any health care. That's a great idea, and you need that health care because, oh, that's right, you're disabled. So you know what happens? They go to the ER all the time, all the time, all the time. They can't get access to their drugs. Many of these folks have mental illnesses. You know how much you're paying for those folks? I'll give you just one cost center. Today, in Vermont County, we pay $110 million property tax. That's just one cost center. There's about 12 others. Imagine what we could do with that money in terms of budgets and the economy and deficits. So I think we're asking all the wrong questions. And I hope you don't feel like I was deflecting, but I'm really passionate about that stuff. We just aren't spending enough time on real ideas and real solutions because we've drawn a line. It's one or the other. It stays exactly the same. You cannot touch it. Don't care that it's going to go bankrupt, and just get rid of it. Those don't. Neither of those are plausible aspects of the future. And I'm on record, you should know, saying I will fight to do away with those social safety nets, and I will. But I'm also on record saying I want things to work for people who need them in the way that they should. And I've got lots of ideas, and I'm open to lots of ideas in the future. Maybe you'll help me figure out what's the best pathway forward. Seem too excited about that.
Oh, I wasn't.
Anybody else, are you sick of me? Dominic is sick of me. Dominic tells me that I talk too long and I can only do it for 10 minutes. Jim, what do you think? Careful.
I was gonna cut away from Social Security. Well, you can talk as long as you want. No, you know, it's one of these things, just 10 seconds. One of the things that you talked about answered a lot of my questions on the first piece. How are you different than what the normal person? Because if you have those kinds of thought processes, those kinds of ideas, you know, you're going to hit that spin and it's going to go, and other people hopefully will have similar thought processes. And that's how the spin's going to change. And if the spin changes, we all win.
I absolutely think so. And I'm a real, I mean, I don't know if this came across. I'm an optimist. It doesn't seem, I don't know why anyone would want to be in elected office if they're a pessimist. They don't believe that anything can be fixed, that there aren't any more good ideas, that we can't build good working relationships, and that in fact the best ideas come out of folks who may not agree on a particular pathway. So I understand that. I think going to Washington is incredibly exciting, and the opportunities to make a difference for my hometown and my community, and my mom and myself and my children is incredible, and it's powerful. And I'm really positive and upbeat about the future, even though I have no doubt that many of those tasks are incredibly daunting. So I don't want to sound myopic or Pollyanna, but I think you do want that in an elected official, is somebody who believes that we really can have productive change and believes that we have a positive future ahead. So I really am going to be quiet. I'm so grateful for your time here today. I know that you're busy and working, and that you took time to allow me to make a presentation today, to ask for your support. I hope that occurs. To let you know a little bit about our race, to remind you that that's my fantastic campaign manager who ran and won one of the most competitive races in the country, Dominic Gabello. And I feel very fortunate indeed to have had your time and attention today.